So wonderful to see everyone and good to be together, practicing together, particularly at this moment. And this moment is like many other moments that we have lived lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So we are exploring the loving kindness practice in depth. And as reference, we're using the text by Venerable Pema Chodron, The Places That Scare You. And I thought the best chapter for this Sunday would be When the Going Gets Rough. So it can seem today like the going is getting a little rough. So one thing I'd like you to start with is a contemplation just within our lives. We certainly are different ages, but when I think of our country being in deep conflict, we can think of the Civil Rights era, the Vietnam War era, the Iraq War era, all the new understandings of racism and gender issues, eras. So just in one life, I have certainly encountered violent eruptions, let's say. Similarly, looking out at you, lots of you are in the middle of a blizzard in areas of the country that are not used to blizzards. In Maine, we're fairly well prepared, but there's a sense of imminent, huge snowfall. So there's the uncertainty of where I live of power and things like that. So we're not inexperienced with difficult times. But then if we look at it from the perspective of Buddhism and having lived millions of lives, limitless lifetimes. Think of how many wars we have lived through, how many eras of disruption. No life in this world of samsara escapes wars, famines, natural disasters. So the question we can ask ourselves today is, yet again, we're called to respond as bodhisattvas in training, as warriors of the heart-mind to maintain open, spacious kindness. How are we abiding in non-aggression and equanimity, and what seeds are we planting for our next life and for our collective karma for future peace on this planet, in these towns and states and countries that we live. So this particular chapter, When the Going Gets Rough, sets out a really beautiful pith instruction that comes essentially from Lojong instructions about how to hold your seat when you're experiencing great difficulty. And we're moving from a model of, let's say, our cultural reference, you have to take sides right now, to not taking sides. How do you hold your seat and not take sides? I'm reminded of Thich Nhat Hanh's training of his early engaged Buddhism students in Vietnam, in which they would pull the bodies off the streets without taking sides, go on boats carrying rice to villages under siege and not take sides. So it's not inaction, it is a sense of not evoking aggression, righteousness, or judgment, rather, moment to moment, seeing how can I be in equanimity so that I can see clearly and help. So the 4 methods that she sets out in this chapter are really clear, beautiful teachings. Not setting up the target for the arrow is number 1. Connecting with the heart is the second step. Seeing obstacles as teachers regarding all that occurs as a dream. So in terms of our training, the first step is really quite critical, and that is what changes the model. Sorry. My family knows that we have class this time of day, so curious. At any rate, the shift in our thinking starts with not setting up the target for the arrow. As long as we are centered around our ego, our belief in a separate selfhood, our belief in needing comfort and security for ourself, that type of striving coming from a deeply seated sense of protection or need for protection and security, we have a target. Anything that threatens our security, our safety, our peace of mind meets that target. If we dismantle the target, there is nothing for any arrow to hit. So if our mind is open, receptive, thinking of others, moving away from the sort of preservation of self and security to the spaciousness that the Heart Sutra teaches, in any situation, there is a lack of centering our experience and a active centering of the experience of others. And if we take into that centering of the experience of others, of how to not harm and how to help, then our whole perspective is entirely different. It's not about right or wrong. It's not about judging. It's about how to observe the confusion of others and skillfully offer seeds of peace, seeds of harmony, wise, skillful action. So one way or one exercise that might open this up is the sense of either watching the news, or if you've been out in some of the demonstrations, thinking about all sound as an echo. So if all sound is an echo, it's not forceful in activating a reaction from you. There's a sense of the sound just passing through, being able to observe the faces, the needs, the physical concerns, Or from a Vajrayana perspective, all sound is mantra. What if all the sounds we hear on the news is indistinguishable from the Amitabha mantra, indistinguishable from Om Mani Padme Hum? That sense that the essence of all sound, the pure tone, is mantra. Then our minds are not getting hyped up, worked up, engaged in despairing thinking, aggressive thinking, seeking security kind of thinking. So we're dismantling our inner target, and we're looking for skillful means of how to dismantle our inner target. And that can come through how we're working with our senses and how we're working with, are we looking inwards to how am I experiencing this, or outwards towards how are others experiencing this, and what are the needs of others in this moment? You can think of this, in any difficult situation that you're in. It could be with your partner, with a family member, with a roommate. Why does what someone says to you continuously provoke you? How is it that it sets off an explosion of reaction? And what is the particular aspect of neurosis that makes up that target? Is it, at the very root, a belief in a separate self, or at a more surface level, I'm a good person, or I know what the right thing is to do, or even my way is right and you should see things my way. So there are many, many different levels of starting to understand what target we carry and what is our work to dismantle that target. The second principle is connecting with the heart. So just because we are dismantling our reactivity, it doesn't mean we're bypassing feeling. So we connect deeply with what we're feeling. And as we know, these feelings are connected to the narrative that we are telling ourselves. So it is the direct experience provoking a feeling, and then subsequently the narrative that we're telling that perpetuates the feeling. So for instance, we might feel deep, deep grief about the shootings in America. We might feel deep, deep grief about starvation in Gaza. And we allow ourselves to feel those feelings, understanding that they're impermanent. And allow those feelings again to be an investigation. We might be feeling, you're feeling anything at this moment. We could all be feeling anything. We might be feeling fear, we might be feeling anger. But when that becomes a practice to investigate what is the nature of that feeling, you feel the feeling deeply, and you see its essencelessness and its impermanence, and at the same time, its wisdom essence. So each of the deeply felt so-called destructive emotions have a counterpart as wisdom. So there might be a particular clarity in the energy of anger. Often when we are angry, our minds get overtaken and confused and narrow due to fear, anger, righteousness, a quality that reincites and escalates the emotion. But if we allow ourselves to feel the feeling and see its essence, in addition to the empty nature of the essence, there is a luminous clarity. The wisdom mind is not absent. And when we let the confusion aspect go, the wisdom mind is present. The third, and that's connected to the previous 2 points, seeing obstacles as teachers. So whatever is on your mind this morning, in terms of the presence of obstacles in your life, how is that a teacher? What are you learning from this obstacle that you would not learn any other way? A quote from Venerable Pema: not only obstacles as teachers, but she's here referencing the villain of the story as a teacher. The one who harms us is under the influence of patterns that could continue to produce suffering for others. Remember that the one who harms us does not need to be provoked further, and neither do we. Recognize that just like us, millions are burning with the fire of aggression. We can sit with the intensity of anger and let the energy humble us and make us more compassionate. We are being challenged to remain and to relax where we are. Who is this monolithic me that has been so offended? And who is this other person who can trigger me like this? How is it that these circumstances have the power to propel me like a ping pong ball from hope to fear, from happiness to misery? Who is this monolithic me that has been so offended? This references the whole year that we spent on the Heart Sutra. Who is this monolithic me that becomes a target for praise, blame, views? Who is this monolithic me that sets up opinions that are the only true opinions, views, the only true views, versus anyone else's view? The fourth point is regard all that occurs as a dream. So this even more deeply references the Heart Sutra teachings. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Appearances are arising, appearances of conflict. The viewer, the viewing, and the viewed, empty of reified essence. When we take a step back and allow our perspective to see that our actual experience is not direct, it is all the views and memories of our life, opinions of our life, forming stories. We can start to unclench the fist of right and wrong and start to see, just like in awakened dreaming, that we have choices about our response. And the dream can move in myriads of directions depending on the choices that we make. We know that looking back on our lives, the conflicts that we engaged in 20 years ago aren't so radioactive anymore. We can review and think, I might have made a better choice in that situation, or it might have helped to de-escalate the argument if I behaved this way. Similarly, if we're able to look out at the shifting patterns that we're encountering now, we can consider what choices contribute to peace for ourselves and all beings. Furthermore, we remember our wonderful Shantideva, if we're uncertain, remain like a log. So we have two choices as bodhisattvas in training. What can we do to contribute to peace? Or let's sit like a log so that we don't cause more harm and that we gather wisdom to be able to see more clearly. The progression of the four guiding statements is really quite interesting. It starts with right now, right with what each and every one of us is feeling, what actually is triggering us. And we're only triggered because we have a target. The arrow is hitting us because we have set up the target. Underneath the target is probably a pattern that emerged in response to some kind of wounding. So connecting with the heart starts to address the root of that target, as well as connecting us to the present moment, with the capacity to do Tonglen for all the conflicts, specific and worldwide. Then we see that what seems like an obstacle maybe we're not choosing for it to be our teacher, but we can make use of it to be our teacher. And as we immerse ourselves in the dissolution of the self-referencing perspective, all of our days become more and more dreamlike in terms of not holding the mind-confusing emotional reactivity and space for how do I practice in this situation and how do I contribute peace in this situation. There's a fluidity instead of rigidity. So let's take a few moments to go into the loving kindness practice. I'll just repeat briefly the instructions for the loving kindness practice, and as we go into this loving kindness practice, if we see each and every being that arises in our mind's imagination as inhabiting or being inhabited by Buddha nature, each being suffering and confused in their own particular ways, then there's no distinction of this person is deserving of loving kindness and this person is not. So we're not trying to control our loving kindness going only to those who deserve it. Rather, having a bigger perspective. So we begin by reflecting on a direct experience of loving kindness, either that we've experienced towards another being, whether it's a child, grandchild, animal companion, or receiving loving kindness, grandparent, parent, spiritual teacher, and just using that reference to evoke the incredible sense of joyous well-being that overflows with the aspiration that each and every person experience this joyous well-being. Then, having cultivated fully that sense of sincere, unlimited open-heartedness with the wish that that person experience this tender well-being, instead of it being general and contained, we allow it to radiate, and it can go to an area of the country or of an area of the world, starting individual by individual that arises in your imagination. Or it can be in your own household, at your own table, in your own friend group or family group. So we allow ourselves to extend that joyous well-being to the person who is right in front of us in our imagination. And every time we notice that there's a faltering or a decrease in the fullness of the feeling of loving kindness, we go back to replenishing it and starting again. Okay, let's take 5 or 6 minutes. So as we're sitting together, whatever has been going on in your heart, see if you can identify in this moment, what is the target that you carry? I know everyone is dealing with different situations and we're in different parts of the country, so everyone is affected by slightly different things. But when you notice reactivity arising, what is the target you're carrying underneath? You can start to see how these two meditations can work together. There's that sense of when we're working with some situations, a resistance to being fully open with loving kindness. And in that resistance is that self-referencing, self-protection arising as an aspect of one quality of target that we hold on to. Let's say a belief, or a belief that, let's say, I could be injured in this way, or I am hurt when I hear this. This is unacceptable when I hear this. That is related to a belief or an opinion about a self. We're turning inward to our own experience as opposed to allowing that monolithic belief in a separate self to loosen a little so that we can see what is happening in the circumstances and where can we plant seeds of peace. Okay, I'll do a quick dedication and then invite reflection. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.